Hey everybody, this is Professor Jason Snart. I'll be your instructor for our English 1102 course here in the very short first 5-week summer term here at COD, or for our purposes online, depending on where you are exactly. So I do a whole bunch of these announcements, or will do a whole bunch of these announcements throughout the term, most of them actually capturing my screen with me talking over it, so you can see what I'm looking at on my screen. Again, kind of reminding you of due dates, or kind of pointing to things that we're covering in our units and that sort of thing. These aren't meant to be obviously scripted or really formal. They're not meant to be lectures where you would take notes or learn content from the course necessarily. They really are just to keep you sort of on track as we go through. And like I said, I'm doing this one just as me, so you get to know me a little bit, or at least know that I'm a real person out here, since I think for a lot of students working in the online environment can be kind of isolating a little bit, or a little bit disconnected, or not quite as plugged in as you might if we were meeting fully face-to-face in a classroom every day or every other day. So this first one is really just like an introduction, welcome to the course kind of a thing. I'll do a follow-up pretty soon that'll actually again be my screen pointing to a few things in our course that you really do want to pay attention to. But there's just a couple of ideas that I want to kind of introduce you to here that they're not really particular to like English Composition 2 or 1102 necessarily, but more kind of overarching principles that I want you to keep really more in the back of your mind as we work through the material in our course. So the first one is a no-brainer, and you've probably heard this a million times, but especially online, especially in this really compressed 5-week term, just basic time management is really important. And I know everybody says that, but everybody's still kind of bad at it, including, yours truly, right? But one thing that I do suggest to students for our particular purposes here in terms of time management is to almost imagine that you taking this class online is just like if you took it face-to-face. So first of all, we know that it's a 3-credit course. So if this were a 16-week term, like a full fall or summer semester, we would be meeting 3 hours every week. So we condense that into the 5-week term, so it's almost like we would be meeting for almost triple that time. It's hard to imagine. Maybe you've done a 5-week term face-to-face, but it's a lot of classroom time. So imagine you were doing that. You would block out your schedule, so you wouldn't schedule, if you had to be in class from, let's say, on a Monday from 9 to 11:50 or whatever it might be, you would block that out in your calendar, and you wouldn't schedule work or plan to drive your sister to the airport or do the laundry or mow the lawn or the billion other things that we have to do, because you have to sit in class, right? Well, online, obviously you don't have to sit in the class, and so we kind of make the mistake, and I know it sounds really simplistic, but we all kind of do this, is that because we don't have to physically be somewhere, we don't block out any time, or we block out really, really marginal time for doing the work that would otherwise take us like at least that 2.5 hours, or 2 hours on the Monday, or 2.5 or 3, whatever it might be, where we wouldn't otherwise schedule something. So my time management tip for you, as corny as it might sound, is to the best of your ability, actually block out significant time. Like if you want to be really precise about it, block out that full equivalent for the 5-week term of that many hours that you'd have to sit in class, which would be almost triple the number that it would be normally, so per week. In other words, block out that time on your schedule for doing your online work. Now, the nice part about it is that it doesn't have to be dictated by somebody else's schedule. That's the face-to-face problem that a lot of people run into, is they don't have that time every Monday and Wednesday to sit from 9 to 12 or whatever the time frame is, where it's dictated by the course schedule. So that's sort of the glass half full, half empty. When someone else dictates it, then you have to do it. When it's not, then you have to sort of take that responsibility yourself. And maybe you don't do those huge blocks like that. Maybe it's later at night, earlier in the morning, or you divide it up differently. That's the nice flexibility part. But if you forget to block out time, or you simply don't do it and think, oh, well, I'll do my online stuff while I'm at work or at school doing something else, or one of the, again, million other things, mowing the lawn, that'd be an interesting trick. Right, it just sort of floats to the bottom of the to-do list because you haven't really scheduled time to actually do it. So again, as simplistic, as corny as it sounds, try to make yourself block out time where you're just going to focus on getting your online work done. And again, it can be spaced out based on your schedule across a whole bunch of days or larger blocks of time. I find that little blocks more often works better. But again, at least give yourself the chance to be successful by not hoping that you'll just get online stuff done after all the other scheduled stuff is done, or that you'll figure it out as you go. Be a little more proactive about it. Okay, so that's the corny time management part. The other thing that I want you to think about is a little bit more academic, or specific to our situation here. So what I find is that too often people take an English course, online, face-to-face, whatever, it doesn't really matter, and they spend all the time doing the course content, doing quizzes or activities, showing up to class, and then they do the big assessment piece, which is usually an essay, and there might be a couple of them that we'll do right over the course of our term. But all of a sudden, all that work that they've done, which is really prep for the essay, they kind of forget that that's connected to the essay. So you learn about how to do a thesis statement or how to organize an essay as content in the class. We do a reading, we do a quiz, we write a short paragraph, write smaller assignments. But then it comes to the time where you put that into place in the essay, and it's like there's a total disconnect. So you're doing things in the essay that we learned really sort of directly not to do as we worked through all of the content of the course. And it seems like really simple mistakes, but again, the time you're putting into the course and then the assessment side, in English, I think, there's for some people like a disconnect somewhere. The flip side then would be, again, to take a really oversimplified example. If you took a history class, let's say, and you showed up dutifully every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for your 50 minutes, and you wrote down a whole bunch of dates and things, important names of treaties and countries and people and all that like factual stuff, right? So you invested the class time, and then it's midterm or final, and you get a Scantron or some oversimplified sort of assessment piece. You're asked to fill in the correct information based on what you learned in class. So in other words, there's a really close connection or obvious connection between your investment in class time and then the assessment part. It's a sort of direct, like one leads directly into the other. And truthfully, the same happens in English. Now, one of my goals for our course here is to make that connection as transparent as possible. In other words, we'll do lots of little things as we go through our course. And sometimes it feels like people call it busy work, or it's not contextualized, it doesn't mean anything. It's all working towards that bigger assessment piece. It's not going to be a Scantron for obvious reasons, but you'll be writing an essay, and that's the assessment part. That's what I look to find out, did this person show up to class, right, for lack of a better term. For our purposes, that means you've read through the content, you've made an effort on the quizzes, on the smaller assignments, and you can now take that information that we've learned and put it into the assessment part, so I can see, oh yeah, student so-and-so definitely understands what we talked about as far as thesis statements or organizing an essay or whatever the topic happens to be. So in other words, it should never feel like we're just doing something for the sake of filling up the time or because we have a unit to do, so we better do something. It's always scaffolding towards that bigger assessment piece, writing essays for our purposes, where I'm looking, did the student invest the time? Does that person understand the content? Can he or she now apply it in an actual assessment situation? So the thing that I want you to keep in the back of your head is how all of the pieces are going to fit together. Even if we're doing something that you don't really have a sense of why am I doing this? Again, try to think how does this fit into the bigger picture? And hopefully, honestly, it makes the work more meaningful and you get more out of it because you understand how this is like a stepping stone to when we get to that assessment piece. And then, of course, once we're at that assessment piece, the essay, which is where most of the points are for this course, you don't suddenly break all the rules that we learned in all of those little steps because the assessment seems somehow disconnected from the coursework that we've done. So that's a thing to keep in the back of your mind. Nothing that I'd ever quiz you on or anything like that. What else? So time management is really key. Understanding how all the pieces will sort of lead into an assessment situation for us writing an essay. And then the other thing that I notice sometimes happens, I think, in online courses is because you're not there in a class minute by minute with me walking you through each of the things that we're doing, whether it's kind of lecture-based like content learning or a little activity or a group discussion or whatever. I think some people, thinking they're working efficiently, will get into a typical unit, and you'll see ours are laid out relatively similarly. And instead of working through the content stuff, what we actually have to learn, whether that's video or just basic text, readings that you've got to do, they'll skim, and look for the assignment. Whether it's a quiz, discussion board, whatever it happens to be, that's almost like skipping all the classes where you'd learn what you're supposed to do, and then showing up for the test and hoping to do well. Again, it feels like you're working really quickly because you're getting things done like back to back to back, but you're doing them really poorly, or you're just kind of guessing, or you're not really learning the big information that will play into those major essays that we write. Again, that's where most of the points for our course come, because obviously that's the opportunity for you to show me that that you've been to class, quote unquote, learned the content, worked through it, taken the time, invested the energy, and now you can show me that you get it, right? And so it's the big points loaded into the essays is a little nerve-wracking for some people, but I encourage you to see that as a glass half full, because most of our course leading up to our essay assignments are a series of ideas, and really a lot of it is grounded in specific examples and models that you're just learning to, I don't want to say copy, because there's a lot more creativity to it, but you're learning to emulate, right? So it's not like you're just guessing at, writing such a mysterious thing, and who knows what this professor wants. Well, again, one of my goals is really to make that transparent as possible in the course, so you always know what's expected of you, so when it comes to assessment time, that's what you can do. All right, so time management, and then the big kind of connecting coursework to assessment idea. Two thoughts to get us started as we get going. So as we're underway here, you're going to want to look at the orientation section, certainly to get you started. You'll see a video that's a little more produced than this one is. It's a little bit older, so things don't look totally exactly like they might in our course, but you'll get the idea. We work basically through our due dates, which is probably the second most important link, or a co-equal, with the units, which lay out, of course, all of the work that we're doing. So our first due date, which I'm just going to check into here, is Thursday, June 2nd. Again, we have really quick turnarounds in our 5-week term. We're doing our first unit, which is just introduction, so you get to know me a little bit, but also you get to know your classmates. In addition to you feeling comfortable just navigating our course, I really do want you to feel like it's a class. You're here with people, actual people who have actual lives outside of English 1102. Hard to imagine, I know, but. A quick reminder then, like it says in our due dates link, or due dates area here, is that for discussion boards, which we do a lot of, there's a double due date system where an original post is always due by noon, and then you have till the end of the day to do any replies. That keeps it from everyone waiting till the last minute, and then you can't reply to people because there's not enough posts, and, well, you get the idea. So it's a little, kind of a wrinkle to learn, but once you get the hang of it, it shouldn't be any problem. And again, to go back where we started, if you're budgeting time really well, then we shouldn't have that issue of whole bunches of people waiting and waiting and waiting till the last possible minute. There'll be some, I get it, but hopefully not the majority. Also note that as we move forward pretty quickly, like our next due date after Unit 1 is Tuesday, next Tuesday, that Units 2 and 3 are due on the same day. Again, we move as quickly as possible up front to give us as much time as we can when we're actually writing those essays, which don't come in for a little bit later in our class. Okay, so that's lots to say just as we get started here. So I'll cut myself off. Welcome to English 1102. It's going to be a very fast experience for you. And if you have any questions or concerns, by all means, you can be in touch with me.